So the Supreme Court recently refused to stop one of the biggest suppressor prosecutions and one of the critical suppressor challenges that was currently in front of them. And now the consequences are here for the individual. A man who challenged the NFA and its suppressor restrictions all the way to the Supreme Court has now officially been denied relief once again, and he is now actually going to face federal prison time. Because of that, he is now having to report today to the federal prisons, and this all comes after the Supreme Court's denial of this case and because of what the Fifth Circuit said in their ruling. So let's break down what just happened, why the court rejected this individual's request, and why this case still has major implications for the NFA going forward. Now, before we jump into this video, if you want to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply by subscribing. You can also hit the like button that just tells the algorithm that you appreciate this content, and so it shares it with more people. I also want to thank one of the main supporters of this channel, which is Attorneys on Retainer. When it comes to self-defense protection, in my opinion, AOR is in a league of their own. They're backed by an actual law firm, the Attorneys for Freedom, and they're always trying to expand upon their benefits to give you as much as possible as a member. And right now, for a limited time, if you sign up using the links down below and you use my code ARMEDSCHOLAR, you can get $50 off of your individual sign-up fee or $25 off the family sign-up fee. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, in this video, we're going to be talking about a critical NFA/suppressor challenge that made its way all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, this all stems from a case called U.S. versus Peterson, which was a major suppressor/NFA challenge that came out of the Fifth Circuit. So essentially, back in 2022, law enforcement officers executed a search warrant at Mr. Peterson's home and his home-based FFL. And during this search, they allegedly found a solvent trap that was in his bedroom safe. And that solvent trap was not registered as an NFA suppressor. And because of that, the government classified it as an unregistered suppressor, and he got a criminal conviction for violating the NFA. Now, Mr. Peterson challenged that NFA conviction, and he claimed that the NFA and the suppressor restrictions violated the Second Amendment. And this eventually made its way all the way to the Fifth Circuit and then the Supreme Court. He argued that the prosecution here violated the Second Amendment because suppressors were protected arms and that the NFA's requirements and registration restrictions violated the Second Amendment. Now, ultimately, the district court rejected those arguments and Mr. Peterson entered a conditional plea, preserving his right to appeal. And because of that, his sentence of 24 months was actually delayed and it was put on hold while his appeal moved forward. This case then went to the Fifth Circuit, and at the first, instance of review by the Fifth Circuit took the position that suppressors were not protected arms at all under the Second Amendment. But then something very critical happened. The federal government changed over, the Trump DOJ got control of this, and then they changed positions on suppressors and admitted that those items are in fact protected arms under the Second Amendment. That forced the Fifth Circuit to withdraw its original ruling in this case, and then they re-reviewed this case and issued a new opinion. But even after recognizing that suppressors are in fact protected arms, the Fifth Circuit still upheld the NFA, and that's why this case is extremely important. The Fifth Circuit essentially treated the NFA like a shall-issue licensing system. In other words, the court suggested that if the government has an objective process for registration, taxation, and approval, well, then the system can still survive even when it applies to protected arms, and it can survive Second Amendment scrutiny. And that is the part of the ruling here that has, raised some very serious concerns and is concerning for other types of restrictions going forward. Now, after the Fifth Circuit issued that ruling, Mr. Peterson then decided to take his case to the Supreme Court and asked for the Supreme Court to review his case. But ultimately, the Supreme Court recently denied review to his case. That meant that the Fifth Circuit's ruling remained in place, so that whole shall issue analysis for the NFA remained in place. And also it meant that Mr. Peterson's conviction and sentence remained intact. Because of that denial, his case was then sent all the way back to the district court. And after they denied review, Mr. Peterson tried to file a new motion in the district court. And this was kind of another attempt by Mr. Peterson to try to at least delay his sentencing and, essentially delay him having to report to the federal prisons. Mr. Peterson asked the district court to modify his sentence. Specifically, he asked the court to change his sentence right now currently from 24 months in federal prison to at least 24 months of home detention. And the motion laid out several major reasons why he wanted that change. First, Mr. Peterson argued that while the case was pending on appeal, his family went through some major trauma and some health concerns, and that he needed to be home to take care of a sick wife. Mr. Peterson also argued that he had complied with the conditions of his supervised release for many years while the appeal was taking place, and therefore he is of no risk to public safety or anything like that, so he should be allowed to at least remain on house arrest. He also argued that the underlying offense was not connected to violence, drugs, gang activity, or anything like that, any other crimes. Instead, it was simply a standalone NFA violation for having a solvent trap. And finally, in his motion, he pointed to kind of the shifting legal and regulatory landscape that is now kind of surrounding the NFA because the ATF has modified and changed a lot of the NFA rules with some new rulemaking. He also pointed to the fact that the government itself had changed positions in his case and admitted that suppressors are protected arms. And he points to a lot of cases currently going on, especially in federal district courts in Texas, that could change the landscape of the NFA, or essentially how that applies to suppressors. But unfortunately, ultimately on review, the district court denied that request, and that means that the district court refused to convert his 24-month of federal prison sentence into house detention. And because of that, today, Mr. Peterson was forced to report to the federal prisons, and so he is going to have to serve that time. And this is exactly why the Peterson case really matters, because the broader Second Amendment issue is not just theoretical. This is not just an academic debate about whether suppressors are arms. The government admitted that suppressors are protected arms by the Second Amendment in this very case. The Fifth Circuit, despite that, still upheld the NFA and said that the NFA structure can apply to these protected arms. And now a man is facing prison time after all of these rulings and after the denial to convert that sentence into home detention. And that is the real-world consequences of this current legal framework. The government can say an item is protected by the Second Amendment, but still argue that failing to comply with the NFA's registration system can result in federal prison time. Now, there's still another issue currently developing in the background in this case. Mr. Peterson is also continuing to challenge his conviction based on ineffective assistance of counsel. Now, one of the issues that has been raised is that his original attorney at the district court level did not properly raise Second Amendment arguments under Bruin. And remember, the timing here for this case is very critical because Bruin was not some minor lower court case. Bruin was the newest and most important binding Supreme Court precedent that came in the Second Amendment realm. It changed the legal test for firearms restrictions nationwide, and the Supreme Court rejected interest balancing and said that the government must justify firearms regulations through the nation's historical tradition of firearms regulations. But Peterson's original lawyer allegedly did not properly rely on Bruin in the district court level or the original appeal. Instead, the briefing relied exclusively on the older strict scrutiny style of framework. So Peterson is now arguing that his defense failed to raise the strongest Second Amendment rulings available, and because of that, some of this needs to be changed and some post-conviction things needs to be modified. Now, that issue may continue through the post-conviction litigation, even though the Supreme Court denied review to the main NFA question. So on the one hand, courts like the Fifth Circuit are saying that suppressors are protected arms, but the NFA can still survive as a licensing or registration system. On the other hand, there are continuing political, regulatory, and legal developments suggesting that the landscape around the NFA may change. And the Peterson case serves as a warning sign to a lot of people about how the NFA is still currently being applied when it comes to these Second Amendment issues, and a man is facing serious federal prison time because of how the NFA is being applied. So unfortunately, that's what's happening to this individual in this case. I do want to mention that Mr. Peterson, I believe, currently has a donation page where you can help with his legal fees and also help with his family while he's gone. I will leave a link to that down below where you can donate or help him if you're interested. But that's where this currently stands. That is what is now developed after that Fifth Circuit ruling surrounding the NFA and suppressors and after the Supreme Court's recent denial in this case. As things develop, as this unravels more, I will let you guys know. If you like this video and you'd like to support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is simply to like, comment, and subscribe. All of those things help to fuel the algorithm and just tells the algorithm that you appreciate this type of two-way content, and so it shares it with more people. But as always, thank you so much for all of your support, and don't forget this nation was built by armed scholars, and this nation will be maintained by armed scholars.